Hello, I'm Chris. Welcome back to Marine Corner. Hope you're doing well. Sorry, I'm a bit out of puff. I've just had to run upstairs with my keys because there was somebody at the door. I've just tried filming this and had to stop. Quick update. Yesterday I said I wasn't feeling very good about myself. Feeling a lot better today. I've also started writing. I see my mum and dad. Got a couple of polo shirts for my birthday off them at the end of the month, which I'll take when I go away. So I just thought, I said I've got 3 TBRs. I'm not going through one. So I was making sure my keys out in the door. I'm not going to go through one. I'm not going to go through 3 and 2. I'm reading 1 because there's a reason for it, and I'll explain as I'm going to why we're not going through them yet. We'll go through them once we finish these. Once I've read these. So starting off, I'm going to go with some. It's been book trek, and I was looking at my Star Trek books where I was up to with them. I only had 2 left to read, but I'm not quite sure which one comes first of these 2. So it's Death's Angel by Kathleen Sky. Death stalks the corridors of the Enterprise. When Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock barely survived the mission to Delta Gamma 4, the deadly planet whose beautiful blue flowers destroy the mind and ravage the soul, Chief Medical Officer McCoy felt something was dangerously wrong. Just how wrong he didn't realise. For when the Enterprise takes on the alien members of a sensitive Federation diplomatic mission, the ambassadors are murdered one by one. The Angel of Death is visiting the ambassadors. So that sounds interesting. So that's that one. And then I've also got The Galactic Whirlpool by David Gerald. Now I'm not quite sure which one comes first, which I'll read them in order though. On a routine mission in deep space, Captain Kirk and the crew of the USS Enterprise discover a lost city drifting in space more than 20 years from the nearest human colony. Its inhabitants are human, but so isolated that they are unable to grasp the existence of other worlds besides their own. Outsiders must be demons. Earth is a place that exists only in legend, in the tales of their ancestors, but time is running out for the forgotten civilization. Their world is being pulled straight towards the centre of a galactic whirlpool, 2 orbiting black holes in space. Can Kirk convince them to trust him before the world is destroyed forever? So they sound really interesting. Like I said, because of book track, I decided to pick the last 2 out that I've not read. So that's that. Next up, I have. This is why I'm not going through them. There's a few of these in there. So this first one is Thomas Harris's The Red Dragon, which is the first one in the Hannibal series, and then it'll follow on in the book. So that's why I'm just reading these at the minute. A psychopath is at large, a monster in the grip of some unimaginable delusion, compounded of sexual hunger, demonic violence and sinister logic. A boastful killer who sends the police teasing notes signed the Red Dragon, so they call him Special Agent Will Graham, the one man with the gift to get into the monster's mind, the one man who can imagine what the madman feels and can anticipate his next act. Red Dragon is quite probably the most suspenseful, terrifying and utterly compelling thriller ever written. So that sounds really interesting. I have seen the film, but I quite like the sound of reading that book. So that's why I'm not carrying on. And then I've got a Corona Samizdat book, Assisted Living, which is just by Roberto Ontiveros, and it's just his short stories, which I want to read, so I'm looking forward to reading that. Plus I love the size of the Corona Samizdat books. And then another Corona Samizdat book. This is by the owner of the press, as well as he's also an author. And this is The Periplus of Spur Tank Road by Rick Arsh. and I've got 3 of these little books, so each one, you'll see them in each one. It was Private Eye in July. Sorry, there's nothing on the back of either of those, just artwork, so that's why I've not said anything about them. And then I've been reading the Matt Scudder Mysteries by Lawrence Block, and this one's called A Ticket to the Boneyard. Really enjoying these novels. So it says, Matt Scudder put the brilliant and elusive James Leo Motley behind bars for good, or so he hoped, because Motley went down swearing revenge on Scudder and anyone who knew him. 12 years later, Motley is out and giving his psychopathic tendencies free rein. No one is safe. Friends, lovers and even strangers unfortunate enough to share the Scudder name. Each step in the resulting grisly dance takes the Big Apple PI one step further away from Iron-On, I'm not sure what that means, and one step nearer to death. So that sounds quite good. Although when you look at some of these books here, like this one's $5.99, they're not $5.99 anymore. That's in pounds, by the way. And then to carry on my Bukowski read, I have Women. I don't think I need to really say about this, it's just a Bukowski book about women. It's Bukowski. And then I've got quite a few here. And then I've been reading Stephen King books, but I'm reading them in order. So this is my next one in that read along, or whatever you want to call it, project. Firestarter by Stephen King. The story of a sinister government agency, a fateful drug experiment, and a pigtailed girl named Charlie who has an unimaginably terrifying gift. So it sounds a kind of bit like Carrie to me, but it's still, like I say, I like Stephen King, so I'm working my way through his books. An author I've never read, picked this up in a charity shop. It looks like somebody stopped. It had a bookmark in it. Looks like it stopped halfway, well, about 45 pages. But it's The Crown of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. I only paid 75p for it. So it says, suffused with rich satire, chaotic brilliance, verbal turbulence and wild humour, The Crown of Lot 49 opens as Oedipeda Mass discovers that she has been made executrix of a former lover's estate. The performance of her duties sets her on a strange trail of detection in which bizarre characters crowd in to help or confuse her, but gradually death, drugs, madness and marriage combine to leave Oedipia in isolation on the threshold of revelation, awaiting the crying of Lot 49. So that sounds quite good. I want to read Pynchon. I think that's a good one to start, because I've got Gravity's Rainbow, but that's quite a long one. And then this is my second one by this guy. It's called Breakfast at Midnight by Louis Armand. I read Glasshouse, Kafkaville. Blake is a pornographer who photographs corpses. 10 years ago, a young man becomes a fugitive when a redhead disappears on a bridge in the rain. Now at the turn of the millennium, another redhead has turned up in the morgue, and the fugitive can't get the dead girl's image out of his head. For Blake, it's all a game, a funhouse where denial is the currency, deceit is the grand prize, and all doors lead to one destination, murder. In the psychological noir escape of Kafkaville, the train never stops, and redemption is just another betrayal away. So that sounds really good. Quite like the cover of that as well. So that's that. And then this is I've got the next two are rereads. So somebody mentioned this. I think it was Macaroni Books mentioned it maybe. Or I've heard it somewhere recently. Somebody was reading it, so I decided to reread it. Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. Prisoner of War, Optometrist, Time Traveller. These are the life roles of Billy Pilgrim, hero of this miraculously moving, bitter and funny story of innocence faced with apocalypse. Slaughterhouse 5 is one of the world's great anti-war books, centering on the famous firebombing of Dresden in the Second World War. Billy Pilgrim's Odyssey through time reflects a journey of our own fractured lives as we search for meaning in what we are afraid to know. So it's really good. I have read it before, but my favourite Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions. I've also read, I can't remember the other one I read. Let's see. I think it was Mother Night. Oh no, Cat's Cradle I read, yeah. Cat's Cradle. I think I've read Mother Night as well, actually, thinking about it. I'd have to check, because with Vonnegut there's quite a few, and I've got quite a few, but I'm not quite sure which ones I've read. Next up, I've got Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. Obviously, I'm a Joy Division fan. I've read this one before, but kept thinking about it, so reordered it. It says, Joy Division changed the face of music, godfathers of the current alternative scene. They reinvented rock in the post-punk era, creating a new sound, dark, hypnotic, intense, that would influence U2, Morrissey, R.E.M., Radiohead and many others. This is the roller coaster story of Joy Division, the friendships, fights, fallouts, the rehearsals and recording sessions, the larger-than-life characters told by the band's legendary bassist Peter Hook. So it was really good, I really enjoyed it, but I fancy rereading it. So that's that. Next up, I've got Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Really wanted to read this and picked it up in a charity shop. A missing girl, a family torn apart, an unsolved mystery. 20 years ago, Claire and Lydia Scott's older sister vanished without a trace. Her disappearance had a devastating effect on their family. Now another teenage girl is missing, and the circumstances of her disappearance are hauntingly similar. It's up to Lydia and Claire to revisit their past, unearthing the secrets that destroyed their family all those years ago. But will they be able to face what they find along the way? So that sounds really good. I love that cover out, it's just that flower with like blood on it. I presume it's blood. Next up is another reread, but this is a brilliant non-fiction book. It's written by Paul Britton and it's called The Jigsaw Man. He's a forensic psychologist and there's some famous cases in here that he goes through, so I'll just tell you what it's about. Forensic psychologist Paul Britton asks himself 4 questions when he is faced with a crime. What has happened? Who is the victim? How was it done and why? Only when he has the answers to these questions can he address the 5th, who is responsible. Paul Britton has assisted the police in over 100 cases and has an almost mythic status in the field of crime deduction. His achievements read as though from the pages of Conan Doyle or Agatha Christie. What he searches for at the scene of the crime are not fingerprints, fibres or bloodstains. He looks for the mind trace left behind by those responsible, the psychological characteristics that can help the police to identify and understand the nature of the perpetrator. So that is a really good book. It's quite a big one though, and it's quite hard going in places, but I found it really mesmerising. Next up, Dan Brown, Angels and Demons. This is like a thriller. An ancient secret brotherhood, a devastating new weapon, an unthinkable target. CERN Institute, Switzerland, a world-renowned scientist is found brutally murdered with a mysterious symbol seared onto his chest. The Vatican, Rome, the College of Cardinals assembles to elect a new pope. Somewhere beneath them, an unstoppable bomb of terrifying, relentless counts down to oblivion. In a breathtaking race against time, Harvard professor Robert Langdon must decipher a labyrinth trail of ancient symbols if he is to defeat those responsible. The Illuminati, a secret brotherhood presumed extinct for nearly 400 years, reborn to continue their deadly vendetta against their most hated enemy, the Catholic Church. That's Angels and Demons. That sounds really good as well, but I have read that before, but I want to reread it. Then I've got Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. That's why, like Wolf Hall, Angels and Demons, the books carry on. That's why I don't want to, read the back of them. In Wolf Hall, one of our very best writers brings the opulent, brutal world of the Tudors to bloody glittering life. It is the backdrop to the rise of Thomas Cromwell, low-born boy, charmer, bully, master of deadly intrigue, and finally most powerful of Henry VIII's courtiers. I want to take that. If we're away longer, I want to take that, or something substantial. Next up, James S.A. Corey, Leviathan Wakes. Humanity has colonised the solar system, Mars, the moon, the asteroid belt and beyond, but the stars are still out of our reach. Jim Holden is an officer at night at Miner, making runs from the rings of Saturn to the mining stations of the belt. When he and his crew stumble upon a derelict ship, the Scopoli, they find themselves in possession of a secret they never wanted, a secret that someone is willing to kill for, and kill on a scale unfathomable to Jim and his crew. War is brewing in the system unless Jim can find out who left the ship and why. Detective Miller is looking for a girl, one girl in a system of billions, but her parents have money and money talks. When the trail leads him to the Scopoli and rebel sympathiser Holden, he realises that this girl may not hold the key to everything. Holden and Miller must thread the needle between the Earth government, the outer planet revolutionaries and secretive corporations, and the odds are against them, but out in the belt the rules are different and one small ship can change the fate of the universe. I think this is the only book that's a series that I've not got the continuation of yet, because I didn't want to get too many of them. The others I found like in charity shops. Right, I've only got 6 books left to go, so I'm going to try and fly through these now. So I'm going to go through the one I've read, well, the 2 I've read first, and then we'll go through the rest. Well, I've read 3 of them actually, but not in this edition. So I've got Stoner by John Williams. I read this twice last year. This is one of the books I want to read next. It says William Stoner enters the University of Missouri at 19 to study agriculture. Later he becomes a teacher, he marries the wrong woman, his life is quiet, and after his death his colleagues remember him rarely. Yet with truthfulness, compassion and intense power, this novel uncovers a story of universal value. Stoner tells of the conflicts, defeats and victories of the human race that pass unrecorded by history and reclaims the significance of an individual life. A reading experience like no other, itself a paean to the power of literature. It is a novel to be savoured. Now, I've seen videos where people aren't taken by Stoner, but I love Stoner. So, but yeah, I want to reread that. That's why it's going there rather than on the floor, because I'm going to put them over there in a minute. Next up, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. I'm on the fence with this. I want to read it again because I feel like there's so much more in it. And I want to carry on reading his books. And it's only short, so I'm going to give it a read. Enter If You Can Bear It, the extraordinary private world of Frank, just 16 and unconventional, to say the least. 2 years after I killed Blythe, I murdered my young brother Paul for quite different and more fundamental reasons than I disposed of Blythe, and then a year late after that I did for my young cousin Esmeralda more or less on a whim. That's my score to date, 3. I haven't killed anybody for years and don't intend to ever again. It was just a stage I was going through. So that sounds, like I say, I've read it before, but I feel like there's something more to it than meets the eye. And then next up, I've read this, but I got this edition before I knew my edition had it in the back, but I still want to reread it because I really enjoyed the book. It's The Reflections on the Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. Reflections on the Name of the Rose stems from Umberto Eco's account of the genesis of his phenomenal novel, but like the novel itself, Reflections goes far beyond the particular. Eco's investigation of the mechanics of fiction expands into a debate that encompasses in small space the workings of the imagination, the responsibilities of the novelist, the blend of invention, research and distilled common sense that goes to make the modern novel. It is no surprise this account touches along the way on bad books, ideal readers, historical form and the metaphysics of the detective story. In this deceptively short text, Eco hands his readers the cipher that unlocks a continually expanding universe. So that's that. Now I'm left with 3 more. John Williams, who wrote Stoner. This is Butcher's Crossing. I recently picked this up not long ago and I really want to get to this because everyone says Some people say this is better, so I want to see if that's right, because I love Stoner. Will Andrews is no academic. He longs for wildness, freedom, hope and vigour. He leaves Harvard and sets out for the West to discover a new way of living. In a small town called Butcher's Crossing, he meets a hunter with a story of a lost herd of buffalo in a remote Colorado valley, just waiting to be taken by a team of men brave and crazy enough to find them. Will makes up his mind to be one of those men, but the journey, the killing, the harsh conditions and the sheer hard luck will test his mind, body to their limits. So I can't wait to read that. Next up is the one I want to read as well soon, Kairos by Jenny Erpenbach. Berlin, 11th of July 1986. They meet by chance on a bus. She's a young student, he is older and married. Theirs is an intense and sudden attraction fueled by a shared passion for music and art, and heightened by the secrecy they must maintain. But when she betrays him with a colleague, the relationship takes a darker turn, just as the GDR begins to crumble, ushering in a new era whose great gains involve profound loss. So I really fancy reading that, and it won the International Booker Prize in 2024. So that's that one, so that's going there as well. And then one that was on Macaroni's books, and I was like, I'm sure I've got that, is White Noise by Don DeLillo. It doesn't really say anything about it, it's just blurbed by different people on the back. So that's that. So that's all the books I want to get to next, or that's on the TBR over there. So that's that. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.